Despite our $150 billion annual investment in the training industry, we struggle to see long-term effects as a result of training. A big contributing factor to this ineffectiveness is that training creates new process, but not the learning that empowers deep competence and innovation. The very best job training will get the boxes checked. The right people will be in the room. Evaluations and metrics will have tight feedback loops. However, what is lost is the number one asset a company has, the employee's insights. By necessity, training teaches uniformity that doesn't apply to each individual. Long-term change comes from the training that invites mindset shifts and local adaptation. Focusing on the mindset allows the brain to create new neural pathways, thus driving contextual and big picture decision making rather than following rigid and memorized instructions. The job training approach to teaching behaviors is simply working through a process. Regardless of how well that's delivered, every process has many unique behaviors that do not necessarily link to a mindset shift. The brain is unable then to create new neural pathways and simply seeks to remember, which often leads to overload. Another method used is linking many behaviors together that are interdependent. The limitation of this is that it only delivers measurable value when all are done together. However, this design does allow the brain to chunk concepts together and, if practiced enough, will create new neural pathways and become a natural part of working. However, the fast change is ensuring that every single behavior has a clear win, whether it uses the other behaviors or not. This results in high brain activity as it's experiencing deep intrinsic value for each behavior, rather than learning several before seeing the value and then considering change. Additionally, all of these wins linked together create the opportunity for a deeper transformational change in how one thinks. Regardless of the method, every trainer faces the same challenge, crossing the bridge from the new information, where awareness is introduced, over to a new default way of thinking and working. Deep Roots uses a pattern that not only crosses this bridge, but allows learning to scale beyond just a couple of teens at a time. Exposure to new information is always the starting place, whether it's in-person training or online training. However, this is not the place for change. It's simply awareness that there are other options. Even if we listen with care and desire to change, our brain's ability to store it will be haphazard at best. The good news is that we can get our brain's new information into longer-term memory. This happens by experiencing the learning, such as mobbing, which is one of the most effective ways to embody new information and discovery. Our brain has moved beyond shuttling information around and has started building some new neural pathways. However, that is only the beginning. How do we get to that daily default that isn't just following a universal memorized process, but instead is making good decisions that serves both the context and the specific local problem? While the embodied experience will start creating those new neural pathways, the action of reflection and story sharing keeps it building. Information simply bounces off and keeps getting shuffled, causing decision fatigue. But story sharing is a deeply effective way for the brain to go straight past the info juggling and into long-term memory. This engages us as a whole person, and our default behavior naturally shifts to the bigger picture. Deep Roots maximizes the long-term learning pathway for coding better by starting with the embodied experience of a mobbing workshop. Not with a laboratory set of code, but an active, messy, frustrating code base. We then introduce all of the techniques experienced in the mobbing workshop one at a time every 2 days. The first day starts with a training demo of what they'll practice for the next 2 days. We next focus on the continual practice of this technique throughout the 2 days before ending the second day with a story sharing retro of what they'll experience. This builds into the long-term change of their default ways of not only coding, but how they think about coding. This method allows Deep Roots to get past checking the box of new information and maybe some embodied realization to teach many teams at a time the behaviors that result in decision making that serves the local need as well as seeing the big picture. After all, Your developers are making dozens of decisions every hour in your code base. You want them to be making the best decision for the situation, giving your organization the best product in the market.